Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ecoffee with Experts. I'm your host, Matt Fraser. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about how to develop a holistic marketing blueprint that is guaranteed to get results with Scott Kindred. Scott is the founder and president of SafeHouse Web, a full-service digital marketing and web design agency headquartered in Hollister, California, with a new office just recently in Las Vegas. He provides consulting to business executives and leaders of organizations who want a holistic strategy for the success of their online presence. When not working on marketing campaigns for clients, Scott enjoys travel, dining, and the occasional cigar. He also enjoys exploring the mystique of the Mojave Desert, its towns, and its history is one of his pastimes. Scott, thank you so much for being here. Pleasure to have you on the show.
Matt, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, you've had an interesting journey so far. How would you describe yourself as a child?
Really sort of adventurous, following my parents' lead. That's how I came up. That's how I learned most of the things, how to be a good person, how to interact with people, how to have relationships. That's really at the core of everything.
Right on. So your parents vastly impacted who you are today?
They did. My father was a school teacher. And so I feel like I have a little bit of that that discipline or that bookwormish or focused on studies. That's part of who I am still today. And my mother is much more social and outgoing, so I got a little bit of that too.
Oh, cool!
And, it's a nice combination.
How do you think that has impacted who you are today in regards to your career in digital marketing?
Great question. Today, people know me, my colleagues and our clients know me as a person who is easy to get along with, pretty easygoing. And I like to keep things professional and productive. I think the most common comment that we get, not just about me, but about the business, because birds of a feather attract one another. We have a team full of people who have a lot of integrity, who want to do good things for the community or social good sort of things. And so that really helps my relationships with executives and other people that we do business with.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, what was your experience like working as the director of digital solutions at Kinetic Search?
That was a great experience. Kinetic Search at the time was a recruiting firm, a boutique recruiting firm in Silicon Valley. And they had some very smart, it was a woman-owned business. And the woman who owned it hired a lot of, again, like-minded people, very smart people. Their entire executive staff was women who brought experience from big tech, from human resource, from healthcare, and a little bit from marketing, like PR agencies and stuff. So it was a really great team to be a part of. We were able to grow their followings on LinkedIn, and I think the other one was Facebook at the time. This is a number of years ago, substantially by simply putting a strategy in place about what are we posting. What are we doing with the social media channel? Is it more than just posting jobs every day, which is what their core business was? Or are we trying to tell the story of who we are as a woman-owned business? Who are we as the type of people that we're trying to recruit for talent and to supply to the big tech companies in Silicon Valley? Wow.
So did you focus on different aspects of those things in regards to the projects, such as you told the story of being a women-owned business, and did you come up with strategies to develop content to publish on the networks at that time to inform your audience that you were trying to reach?
We did. We kind of had a two-pronged approach at the time. Two prongs that were public-facing. One was the website, and the other was social media. So with the website, we did a complete redesign of their corporate website that went. It transitioned basically from a very plain looking job listing sort of website to something that showed actual faces, people, stories of what was going on with executives in the company, and success stories about people that they were hiring and placing with their clients. So that was a major push for the website prong. The other part was social media. I sort of touched on a minute ago.
Yeah.
Where we were able to do a lot. We planned out and strategized. I call them snackable, bite-sized pieces of content for social media, particularly LinkedIn, because that's the native nature of it is for job searching, especially for professionals. Absolutely. And so we created an entire strategy that had bite-sized content, imagery that was about people rather than job descriptions.
Yeah,
and a lot of that just really turned it around. Yeah,
wow. What was the impact of that?
It's kind of hard.
You mentioned you turned it around. So was there a percentage of increase in revenue or in leads or in website traffic?
What I recall off the top of my head is we doubled the following on LinkedIn. Oh, okay. So it was at something around 1,500 or 2,000 people when we first came in. And when we left, it was around 4,400 or 4,500. Yeah, so that's the stat that I can remember off the top of my head.
Well, hey, that's a pretty good stat.
In general, I know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just in general about the website. With every project we do, of course, we use Google Analytics. We install that and use that to track visitor activity. And I know that when we first started, they were coming in with like a couple hundred visitors per day to the website. Oh yeah. And when we left, it was a couple thousand per day. Oh, so those were kind of good impacts.
Absolutely. Totally significant. How would you say that experience has impacted your career today?
I took that as a really good experience working with an executive team that was really well seasoned in Silicon Valley. Yeah. That was a newer and very motivating experience for me. And to take away from that and what it impacts our business today is that we're more aware of the mindset that comes along with doing business in Silicon Valley. We're not just in there, of course, Silicon Valley. We've got a new office in Las Vegas too. And we've got clients across the country remotely, thanks to the technology of today. But that particular experience really honed the ability to work more closely and more effectively with Silicon Valley stakeholders.
Cool. I imagine it gave you more confidence as a marketer as well.
It did. Yeah, that's a good point. It did a little bit. It just validated that for me in my particular role, not what our team was doing, but for me personally, that it's all about the relationship. You know, a person like me can have all kinds of book knowledge and education, formal education. But if a person like me is not good at relationships, then most of that other stuff's not going to work too well. So that was a big takeaway.
Yeah, that's a big key. What was the turning point, Scott, that made you want to become an entrepreneur and start your own digital marketing agency? I believe you did that in 2007. So we're going back a little bit.
We are. I think you just flipped the switch to the Wayback Machine. So way back, I had started on my own dabbling in HTML, trying to, self-taught HTML and CSS. And it was just kind of interesting. It's a building process. It's a learning process. And the shorter version of that long story is that eventually a friend of mine who owns a local bar and grill said that they needed a new website for their bar and grill. And I thought, well, I've learned enough. I can do that. And it was my first time at doing something commercial. And when she saw it, she loved it. And she said, how much is this going to cost me? And really, I had never thought of that. I was just doing this as a learning exercise. Like, wow, somebody actually asked that I build their website for them. And so that's when the light bulb went off about an entrepreneurial opportunity. It's like, wow, people want to pay me for this. Yeah. And so that kind of led quickly into a bunch of other small jobs for other mom and pop shops and small things. But it built up my character, it built up my skills. And I eventually came to the point where I was making enough per month or as much per month as I was in a regular, go to the time clock and punch in, punch out job. Yeah. And 9 to 5. So we had a discussion. Yeah, exactly. Had a discussion with our family. It's like, what do I do? Do I keep doing the 9 to 5 or do I do my own business? And So here we are today.
All right, on. Did you just take the full leap? Like, did you, like some people just jump in, they got no savings. I mean, I'm not trying to pry too much personally, but like, did you have a emergency fund saved up just in case, like a certain amount of money in the bank to cover things? I know people who have started with nothing and their wife was in the hospital with bills piling up and they started a YouTube channel and now they're a 7-figure entrepreneur. Like, there's those stories, but what was it like for you? Was it just 2 feet in and no looking back, just burn the bridge and go?
The answer is yes to that. Yeah. It was truly a leap of faith. I talked about it with my family. I prayed about it. I let it sit for a little bit, and it really was. There was no savings. There was no anything. There was no safety net. It was simply like, let's do this. You're feeling prompted to do this, do it. Yeah. And it's worked out really well.
It's worked out pretty good. So you've, have a talent for helping businesses with a holistic approach to marketing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. The holistic approach came to me when I had enough clients say that they needed a website. Yeah. And we would build the website and turn it over to them most of the time, or we'd continue helping manage it. But they became disillusioned, disappointed after about 6 months because they had in their mind that this new website was the silver bullet that was going to make them rich. It was going to, their business was going to skyrocket. Yeah, exactly. And so it only took a couple of those for me to realize that I needed to do a better job of setting expectations, that building a new website is not the answer. It's not a solo single channel thing.
It's a foundation.
Exactly. And today I like to call it the hub. It is the foundation, but the holistic approach that we talk about is that if your website is the hub of everything you're doing digital marketing wise, everything else from that is like a spoke. It spins off of that. It could be social media. It could be the newsletter. It could be white papers. It could be Google ads. It could be any other thing that you're doing as a digital marketing effort, but it should all be based on that hub, that website. So the website in itself is not the holistic approach. It's all those spokes that we talk about. How a business needs to have their eyes open to the whole thing to get better results.
How do you educate business owners who there's so many of them out there that think that you just need a Facebook page. Like the heck with a website. You don't need a website today. In fact, some people some marketers, they even talk about, well, you don't need a website. You just need a Google logo, Google my business, or whatever the heck they're calling it. Google business profile. You and I both know over the last 15 years, they've changed the name so many times. It's ridiculous. But anyway, a Google business profile, or you just need a Google site, or you don't really need a website. You just need some. So what are your thoughts? I mean, do you immediately eliminate those people as prospects, or do you try and educate them?
These days we try and do a little bit of education because first of all, it's the right thing to do. If somebody, my own opinion is that if somebody has that opinion that they don't need a website, or that Facebook is enough, or that a Google business profile is enough, then I want to try and help them. I want to try and give them some additional information to consider, because for the most part, that's not going to get them where they want to be. And we also don't immediately decline those kinds of opportunities to work with people, because there are some people that will sort of listen. They're eager to listen to, well, what more is there? And so we get into the whole thing about, well, if you have your own website, you can do A, B, and C. Actually, you can do A through Z, depending on what your business needs.
Yeah. What are some of those things then? Like, do you have a specific, what are some of those ABCs, those benefits of having your own website, like that you've shared with a client, maybe a particular story?
Sure. So storytelling is at the core of my answer.
There you go.
Is because you cannot, on Google Business Profile, just as an example, tell an adequate story about your business or its successes. You can use it as a wall to post up your success stories or your 5-star reviews. And those are important, but they don't tell the whole story about you. And I would say the same thing to a lesser degree with Facebook. I mean, you can do a lot with Facebook these days about kind of as a container for your business. And again, we won't, I don't discount those as places to start as long as the person or the business realizes they're a place to start. Yeah, because you could start with a Google Business profile, like you said, or a Facebook page and get some revenue going to be able to fund the website. But always having the website as the hub, the central hub in mind to develop those spokes, right? Am I out to absolutely? Yeah. No, I think you're right on. And the Google Business profile, while we say that's not a good standalone option, we do say that's essential to your holistic marketing plan. There are some corporates that really don't care too much about Google Business profile because they're not trying to get the local person or even the regional person. So it's not as important to them for lead generation, for example. It's more important to them for brand awareness. And authority and trust. Exactly. Yeah. So when you Google the name of this big corporate, they may not care that they're on Google Maps or not, but they need to have the entire first page of Google occupied by nothing but their brand. So that's one of the ways to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Whereas local, they just want to target specific. That's for sure. How do you go about, like, what tips would you give or advice would you give to a business who wanted to start using a holistic marketing strategy, wanted to grow into the hub and spoke marketing model? It always starts with strategy for me. That's where we start all of our conversations. So if somebody comes to us and says, hey, can you give us some tips on what to do? Or can you help us with what we need to do for our website or our online presence in general? Strategy is always square one. And if they've already got that in place, then we can start talking about, okay, how do you want to execute that strategy? You know, if they're an e-commerce business or if they're a local service provider, needs kind of, service provider, anything that needs lead generation, that's one path. Another path is they don't need any of that stuff and they just want brand awareness. Or, they don't want any of that stuff either. And they just want to get donations. We work with a lot of nonprofits. Oh, wow. So there are different paths, and we listen to that strategy and try and come up with tactics. In the case that they don't have a strategy, we kind of just say, okay, let's stop. We need to camp out here for a little bit, and we need to help you get that strategy in place. Do you think all businesses can benefit from taking a holistic approach to marketing campaigns? That's a great question. Yeah. I was thinking maybe there's some businesses out there that, like you said, there's some enterprise companies only care about branding, and maybe a holistic approach isn't something they're all too concerned about. I don't know. I'm surprised by the things I learned from business owners. I think, again, you hit the nail on the head, Matt. There are, especially at that corporate level, we get this a lot, that they want to focus on brand awareness. They want to focus on a little bit of outbound communication. They want to be authorities in their space. They want to have some thought leadership. They want to back up what they're doing at trade shows, for example, or conferences. Maybe their CEO is speaking at a big conference, and they need everything with their online presence to back up what that CEO is doing that particular week or that month. So those things are very focused. They have nothing generally to do with lead generation or any of the other spokes, unless that's part of their strategy. Again, so we talked a few minutes ago about strategies. Everything sort of goes back to that for us. I'm trying to think about how lead generation couldn't be important for them, because even if they're, the brand awareness thing, it's like, well, that's how you get leads. Like, at the end of the day, you need to have your phone ringing, or your web forms being submitted, or your chat sessions being opened, or whatever the case may be. So it just surprises me that isn't a relevant factor for some of the bigger companies to think about.
I mean, no, so here's a for instance, like, I guess like Coke, the company Coke, I'm sure they have a holistic marketing strategy. Maybe some people don't think that they would think about that because, I mean, they're not looking to get leads for buying a can of Coke. They're just looking to sell more soft drinks or whatever they are, right? So,
right.
That's interesting how they would. I don't know what they would use to measure their engagement. Different companies, so they got a strategy for a Coke company for a soft drink company would be totally different from a plumber. So I guess, like you said, you have to analyze what the end goal is in mind of what you need done, and Certainly. What is of value to the business in order to do that. Do you think it's in regards to budget? Like, what advice would you give to someone for a budget? So let's say, for instance, there's a difference between a plumber and I just said a software company. And what I mean by budget, if I could clarify, Scott, is for instance, people who listen to this know that I worked as the marketing director of a car dealership. I had the budget segmented by percentages, a certain percentage to Facebook, a certain percentage to Google Ads, a certain percentage to display and retargeting, a certain percentage to SEO, a certain percentage to whatever, and divided it. But as you and I both know, if a plumber only has $300, you ain't going to be dividing that budget into those kinds of numbers because you'll never get any reach. So I guess, what is the best way from when budgeting for these marketing niches and for holistic approach? What is the best way to take a big picture view of to do with budgeting?
Sure. Big picture, I like to start there because we can say big picture to the plumber who's got $300, or we can say big picture to the corporate that's got, $3 million, $30,000, $3 million, whatever it might be. And that big picture for us boils down to a combination of two things. What is your budget and who is your audience? Right? Yeah. It's not so much what you want to get done. Some people will say, well, it depends on how you want to convert them. For the plumber, he wants his phone to ring so he can go, provide a plumbing service at somebody's home or business. For a corporate, they may not want the phone to ring. So for us, it's about the budget and about their audience, who they're trying to reach. And for small, medium businesses, getting into a percentage allocation, like you just mentioned, is something that we will help with. But really, it's a case by case because we do that whether or not they have the internal infrastructure to do that. They may be established enough where they have an accounting department, they have a budget, they already have the line items for website, SEO, social, email marketing. They may have all that in place. And so then we'll kind of switch gears and say, all right, since you have those in place, let's talk about your audience. Who do you want to reach? What's the most effective channel? And usually those discussions reveal where the percentages should be allocated. Absolutely. Now, in the case where a business doesn't have that infrastructure, we usually don't get into the discussion of percentages. We keep it a little more high level, again, about who do you want to reach? And then we talk about the how, right? Because if they've got a limited budget, we're going to talk about who they want to reach and how, because that will determine how much money is available. For example, we have an oxygen therapy clinic as a client.
Oh, wow.
Hyperbaric oxygen.
That's neat.
And they want to reach people with sports injuries, traumatic brain injuries, non-healing wounds from diseases like diabetes. They have a wide range of people within hyperbaric oxygen therapy that they want to reach. But from a marketing standpoint, we can pick some of those. We can pick, so you want to get to the athletes, right? They happen to be located in a professional sports rich environment geographically. And so they have a lot of football players, they have a lot of baseball players, hockey players that get injuries. And so that's a question as part of the discussion about how you allocate the budget. It's like, well, do you want to target the professional sports and athletes, or do you want to target instead those with the traumatic brain injuries? They were helping a lot of the veterans coming back from the Gulf War, from Afghanistan. So you want to target that? Because that means we're going to be talking to a different group of people. We're talking to veterans, healthcare service providers. So all those things really, depending on what the business wants and who their audience is, defines how we talk about budget.
Yeah. What about helping businesses to I tried to do this at the dealership, the lifetime value of a customer. It just blows my mind away. I'm going to be upfront with you. To this day, they didn't have any idea what the lifetime value of their customer was. And they'd been in business for 10 years. And it's like, okay, all you guys are thinking about, and this was what really frustrated me, to be frank with you, was all they were thinking about was the sales of the amount of margin and profit on the initial sale of the car. And to me, which was ridiculous, because I'm like, that person, if you treat them right, is going to come here for service. If we sold the right customer in the right geographical area, whatever, they're not coming from the other side of the city to get a deal and then go to the local dealership close to them. And if they do that, they're going to get crappy service anyway. I know from experience. But the point being is that the average person owns their car now for 5 to 7 years. Like, finance terms have vastly changed for cars. There was the 4-year itch, but I'm just saying people usually keep it from 5 to 7. Then they switch. But even if they switch at 4, there's all that money you're making in service. And if you give them a really good experience, they're going to refer other customers to you. They maybe have people in their family. Like, calculating all that and looking at looking at all that data and seeing, and even looking at just one person and using that as a example, a foundation of, honest goodness, it's more money than the point I'm trying to make is it's more money than just the first margin on the first sale of the car, is in order to determine how much money you can spend on a vehicle. So, or how much the lifetime value of the customer is. But anyway, we finally got it down. And and I also knew what the industry average was in the automotive industry. It's about $350 a car. So we used that projection based on how many vehicles we wanted to sell. If we wanted to sell 200 cars in 1 month, then you times that by 350, and that was our budget. But I told that whole story just because, sometimes it's hard to get that information out of people, or even to get business owners to think that way. But what are your thoughts and your experiences in that regard?
Sure. Lifetime value has been very difficult to manage or to even get from a business. Everything that you just said, Matt, about it may not be a reluctance to see things in that bigger picture, lifetime value versus the immediate margin. We've found that the ability to do, I want to say, the research or the accounting to actually come up with a hard number for lifetime value. That's the challenge for most businesses, because for us, if we're going to leverage that with and for our client, they need to have done the footwork to identify what that lifetime value is. It's not something that we're going to go in and necessarily help them with, because it gets too deep into, accounting and so forth.
Well, it's more a CFO's job, right? CFO, even if they have a fractional CFO, that would be, but it would be beneficial though if more businesses focused on that. Not like the theory is good, but I guess people just aren't doing it. Like, I'm pretty sure McDonald's knows the average lifetime value or the average transaction, and how anybody with a loyalty program knows how much money. Like, I shop at my grocery store with a loyalty card. I guarantee you they're collecting that data of how often I shop, what my average purchase transaction is every time I go there, and how long I've been a customer. Like, that's one way to do it, isn't it? Trying to have a loyalty program. You talked about audiences. What are some other methods besides what you mentioned what are some methods for conducting market research to better understand an audience? Like, how did you get that? I mean, that's some pretty interesting information that you shared about the oxygen chamber company, and they knowing that, okay, these are the types of people they want to target. Sports athletes is obvious, but what about some strategies when it's not so obvious to be able to identify who the customer is? And again, coming back to the car industry, I asked for that information about the audience of who we were trying to sell the entry-level sedan to, and they didn't have that information. Even the head office did not have that information for me. And this is a very large company. As a manufacturer, I won't say who they are, but anyway, just don't want to throw them under the bus. But what I'm trying to make is, in figuring out who the audience is? What's been in your experience of strategies to figure that out?
Sure. Every single time that we've done business, whether it's a smaller business or it's a corporate, it all starts out with the anecdotal. Who's your market? Who are you selling to? Or who do you want to reach? Again, goal-oriented, audience-oriented, but it's always based on anecdotal information from our client. And the next drill down on that is who's giving us that anecdotal information, because it makes a huge difference if we're getting the anecdotal information from the CEO or a vice president or an operations manager or a salesperson. Right. And the data, the anecdotals from all those people we find valuable, but we know from experience that without fail, they differ widely. There's a wide range between who the CEO says they're selling to versus the other down at the end of the chain, the salesperson who says, no, this is who we're selling to and why.
Wow.
So we take a lot of time talking. We take a lot of time talking to everybody, but it's generally that salesperson or one level above that gets us the most relevant information, real life,
most relevant, accurate, actual, real.
Yeah.
That is so amazing to me, Scott, that there's such a disconnect between the CEO and the top level executives and the person who's on the boots, because he's running the company. Like, you'd think he would know or should know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not that they don't know. I don't mean to imply that they don't know.
Okay.
It's that their vision is different.
Okay.
Right. I'll use an example. It's easier to talk about this with an example. So one of our clients is in the defense industry. And so they supply equipment to the Department of Defense, and some commercial and some research and development uses. But at the top of that organization, the anecdotal information that we get, which is eventually backed up by data, is we're selling X million dollars to the United States government and X million dollars to such and such research lab. So that's our audience. And that's kind of where it stops. Right. And then you go down one level, and the next level, the VPs will say what the CEO said, yes. And we're also selling, we're providing our equipment and our research and development and our expertise to law enforcement agencies. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. If you've got military grade equipment, then you probably have a customer base in law enforcement as well.
Yeah.
Then you get down a couple of levels more to the salesperson who's actually going to trade shows, who's actually following up on sales calls, who is probably the brain behind the brochures, all of the marketing collateral. You get to that person and you learn what the CEO said is true, what the VPs said is true. And what I'm doing today is I'm talking to the Tactical Officers Association at such and such police department.
Yeah.
So that just got real granular, right? Yeah, so we went from the CEO saying that we're selling X million dollars to the government to the salesperson saying yes, 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 but we're also selling to the SWAT team in so-and-so police department. So that kind of research, if you will, is critical to what we do when we're developing a plan for a client's content in SEO.
Absolutely. Because you got to know who you're speaking to and who your audience is.
Sure.
So what about the next step of developing a message that resonates? Tactics or strategies that you take for, developing the right messaging for one of those audiences that you just mentioned.
Sure. We always kind of value, this is the opposite of what I just said. We always value what the CEO says higher than what the salesperson says. So if we're talking strategy, messaging, branding, that's always got to come from the top. And so, and that's the guiding principle for whatever messaging we might be doing. It could be on social, the website, newsletters, whatever it might be. But we need to have a very clear message from the CEO in the form of a mission or a vision or a set of principles, guiding principles, whatever they may have to call it. But what that CEO says is at the core of the strategy for developing messaging.
Yeah. What about for instance, developing different campaigns around those different segmented audiences and coming up with those kinds of things to develop messaging? Like, do you use the problem agitate? I can't remember what it's called, but there's the AIDA formula, for writing ads, I guess. But for coming up with messaging that indeed does. I'm just trying to find. My apologies. Coming up with the attention, interest, desire, action sort of deal with, with developing, that's for developing ads, but it can also be a type of messaging or else the problem, there's a problem solution style of messaging in regards to speaking to your audience.
Absolutely. I would say at a corporate level where brand awareness and messaging is more important, we take a softer approach to the problem solution. In that kind of situation, we usually focus on authority and storytelling versus problem solution. However, what you brought up about problem solution and that formula, I can't remember the acronym either, but agitating and so forth, very effective for copywriting, and our copywriters do follow that formula or a similar one for, I want to say, not necessarily smaller businesses, but businesses that have a more lead generation, a more sales focused goal for their messaging.
Otherwise, you're using stories to tell the story, like how the defense company got started and the story around. I suppose you could tell the story of the brand around, because everybody is, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but in order to make money, you need to solve a problem. And the bigger problem you solve, the more money you make. Like Elon Musk has solved a lot of problems that are really big, or is working on solving a lot of problems that are really big. PayPal, he solved a huge problem with online payments. I mean, Tesla, he's solving a huge problem with, the environment. He's not exactly building cars for profits. He's got another alternative motive. But the point I'm trying to make is that this defense company, they're obviously solving a problem for the U.S. government. And you can, and what I'm assuming, and from hearing what you're saying, is that instead of taking that approach that I talked about, you can also take the approach of using stories to tell the story of the brand, and to get, the interest of maybe the targeted demographics, since they're targeting the Department of Defense. Maybe they have a persona, and I guess maybe I'd like to ask you what personas, like developing the persona of the person who's the head of that, the purchaser in government is the person who's the final decision maker. Like, is it important to get to that level of developing that kind of persona of that kind of person? Who is it, and what they are, what's going to move the needle for them, and including that in the storytelling on that level?
Yeah, wonderful thinking, Matt, and question. The answer is yes, and I can only use our experience as an example. I don't want to say this is the blanket for, but
no. But I'm interested in your
the head of purchasing, for example, the head of purchasing at a government agency is not the persona, and it's really not the person we're trying to tell the story to. We're really trying to tell the story to and develop a persona around the influencers on the decision making. So the person at purchasing is probably more of a cog in the wheel. Like they see the paperwork come across because there's somebody higher up who's already made the decision. So the higher ups is who we want to get to. We have found that in this particular situation, talking about who the equipment helps is very effective. And you boil that down, right? We're going to boil it down real quick. Who does that equipment help? It helps the soldier.
Yeah.
Is that not the most important thing?
That is
Answer,
the most important thing. Absolutely.
Yes. So if we take that approach that what's being messaged, what's being said, the stories being told is all about helping that soldier, then the decision maker is usually in line with that. And of course, they got a whole bunch of other factors floating around about budget and politics and all that stuff. But the nuts and bolts of it, if we stick with telling the story of who, the end user, how does this help the end user?
Yeah.
Even if it's a Defense Department thing or not, if we tell that story in any industry, it's the way to go.
Wow. There's a golden nugget right there. look for who the end person is, the end user is benefiting. And in this case, it's the soldier. That is just, that's just awesome. What do you think in regards to how important do you think it is, or do you think it's important for businesses of any kind, like to develop a marketing funnel? Because the website's the hub. So should there be a marketing funnel, like for instance, all these different channels and these different touch points? And what I mean by marketing funnel, I'm talking about from the top of the funnel, or you want to call it customer journey now, call it that. But the different content pieces for the beginning, middle, and end of the journey of the customer or client, or whatever the case may be, or top, middle, and bottom, however you want to say it. And developing key pieces of content and knowing, where's the conversion going to happen, or where do we want the conversion to happen? How important is that, do you think, for businesses to develop and plan out as a part of a holistic strategy?
Sure. I think it's critical for all of the businesses we serve. It's a critical component of the plan, of the strategy, is what does your funnel look like? And at the end of it, the end, again, going right to the end of it, the end user, at the end of the funnel, what do we want to happen informs what we do on all the wider parts of it. So at the very end informs how we develop the top of it.
Start with the end in mind.
Yeah, exactly. So and I keep using these examples that are not hard lead generation examples.
No, but I'm glad, because it's interesting.
Sure. Okay, good. And I think everybody that is in our spheres, Matt, in marketing, digital marketing, they know what a funnel is. They know how to use it. Yes, they know how to implement it. And as do we. But this thing of having like I want to say a more vague funnel, if you will, like for these corporates that are not lead generation based. Well, what's at the end of the funnel?
Yeah.
Is it you got them to go to an event? Is it that they downloaded a white paper, but you didn't collect their information because you really don't care about their information because you don't have a sales department, right?
Yeah, I've seen that.
And we actually have a client where that's a valid move for them, is to have no collection, no lead collection at the end of the funnel, because that's not their intent. They've seen proven success from what I call the billboard effect.
Okay.
You're driving by the billboard on the freeway. You have no idea what that generated.
Yeah. No, you don't.
And so there are one of our clients who has, I want to call it a luxury, who has that luxury of spending money on the billboards and not being able to measure what that does or does not do. So in those cases, the funnel is, if you're using the billboard effect, the funnel is at the top of it. It's that billboard. And what you're doing in the middle of it is, people are listening or watching, but you're just not able to measure it. So you're still putting out content. You're still putting out the thought leadership or the white paper or the guide. You're just not able to measure anything. Okay. And to me, that's a rarity. Everybody else needs to have a funnel that is very specific, intentional, and measurable. We have, I'll go back to the oxygen clinic, or we have, we have another client that's in oil and gas, and their focus is on incubating smaller ventures that are within their sphere. So they'll run an incubator, and at the end of their funnel is to get new innovative companies into their incubator.
Okay.
So for them, the funnel is at the top. If you're doing innovative things in oil and gas or solar or wind or ocean, that's the collection point. And when you get in, the refinement of the funnel is, well, which of those areas are you working in? And the next refinement is, what have you done? Do you have any proof of concept? Do you have anything that's out on the market? Or at what level is your R&D? And then down at the end of the funnel is, give us your name and contact information, and let's have a conversation. Yeah. So even in those situations, the more specific and intentional funnel is critical.
Yeah. It could be the contact form, I'm assuming, and them having fields of what you mentioned, those 4 different things of whether it's solar, oil and gas, or water, or I can't remember the other one you mentioned, but it could just be a contact form of inquiry for more information. Could be the final stage of doing that. So yeah, I personally think it's important, but I don't see businesses in my experience estimation even today are I think people are just starting to realize the value of doing that. And maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's because the technology has now made it more possible. Which brings me to my next point. Like, are there any specific platforms that you would, or tools that you suggest or that you use? For instance, everybody knows Infusionsoft, and they changed the name to Keep, and people still keep calling it Confusionsoft. And there's, Active Campaign. Those are obvious ones, but is there other? Salesforce? Let's just be frank. Salesforce Salesforce is dominating the market in that regard as to get to the point of what I'm talking about as an example. But from your experience, what do you have a go-to favorite or something that you recommend or use?
We use HubSpot.
Yeah,
I'm
there you go.
Here a little bit.
Can't even forget. I can't believe I didn't even. How could I not mention HubSpot? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're great, and I say they're great because it's easy for entry level or mid level and even experienced users. Yeah. And what we do when we're talking about a CRM for any of our clients is the first thing is to gauge savvy within that organization.
Okay.
I don't know if my Salesforce experience is a little bit limited, but the experience I do have has informed me that it's very robust, very complex if you let it be. And it becomes almost useless if you have a part-time user or a part-time administrator doing that for your company, because it's so robust that the person who's managing it or administering it needs to be using it every day, at least every week. To
be an expert.
Otherwise, there's so much to it that you forget. But it is without question the most powerful CRM out there, and that's why most of the enterprise companies use it. Many of them, but HubSpot for me is a really good option when you don't have that kind of need or you don't have that kind of human resource to dedicate to managing your CRM. So that's a good one that we use. And below that, if a company is not ready for or doesn't have a need for a certain platform, we can help recommend tech stack for them.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they just maybe all they need is email marketing.
Yeah.
So maybe all they need is Constant Contact or MailChimp or something like that.
GetResponse or Aweber or hundreds of other ones, ConvertKit or the hundreds of other ones that are out there.
I was going to say there's at least a score of them. So so we'll go in that direction too, based on what the client's need is. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm very well aware of HubSpot, and I think they are what's the word I'm looking for? The golden example. That's not the word I'm looking for, but there's another word, the golden standard of using lead generation and content marketing and like funnels, because they just provide you with such irresistible offers for lead magnets that are of value as resources to get you to opt in and get you into their funnel. And that it's amazing to see what they've done and how they've taken inbound marketing to the next level. What's one big takeaway you want our listeners to get from this episode?
I think education and storytelling. If you do that for yourself, if you wrap your own head around education, and I say that in the vein of being savvy about what you want to accomplish, what your tools are, and what your budget is. If you're educated about that, you're already 10 steps ahead of a lot of your competitors. The other part is storytelling. Mm-hmm. And this is something that is probably one of the reasons why we're in business and why we have a lot of happy folks, is that we help with storytelling. Not everybody is a storyteller. Yeah. And you could have a CMO You could have a marketing director. You could have whoever that lead person is really good at leading the department, but they're not great at storytelling. So they need to have either they need to realize that and then hire somebody that can help, whether it's an internal staff or they outsource it. But having that mindset and being aware, like we deal with this often, so I'll use it as a takeaway. The CMO or the marketing director, or marketing manager within the company has got a lot of moving pieces going on. And the recommendation is they never lose sight of what the company is doing, what the company is producing, what the company is communicating, so that they can mold that, what the company is doing, into a marketing communication. And there's the storytelling. They may not be able to spice it up or make it sound, articulate it great. But if they know what that is, they can feed it to somebody like our agency or to an in-house person that knows how to articulate. So those two things, Matt, I think are critical.
I would say having knowledge of copywriting would come in there in order to be able to do that. Would you not?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. We get that a lot. You know, we'll get people say, well, I don't know what storytelling means. I'll say, just say what's happening, right? Yeah. Just say what's happening and involve the people that are happening. Have a goal, have an outcome. So we go through that exercise with them. But if they don't have a copywriter, they're not at ease with writing themselves, then there's the education part coming in. They need to recognize that, hire out for that. Absolutely.
Hey, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. How can our listeners connect with you online if they choose to do so?
They can go to SafeHouseWeb.com, our website. They can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn, and happy to help, happy to talk.
Right on. And you personally are on LinkedIn as well?
That's right. You can go on LinkedIn and / Scott Kindred, and
fantastic.
My face will pop up.
Right on. I'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well. Again, Scott, hey, I want to thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Matt. I hope you have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.